So if I see them on the wall, if I see them on the ground, usually the striking coach gives way to me. But when they're on their feet, I usually don't say much. But I don't say much because, I myself, I've sparred before, but I'm not at the level of these guys. I have ideas about how to enter into takedowns, what to look after, based off of my judo. I might not understand. I might not want to get involved in the striking, but I do understand distance and staying within safe range. So I don't say too much when they're on their feet striking. But once we hit the ground, I'm usually just rifling off, commands as much as I can. And I have to say throughout my career that I've been lucky to have fighters that do a good job at listening.
Now, when you're being a coach, you have to wear, depending on the wording or phrase you want to use, you have to wear different masks or hats, and everybody, humans are all different, and no matter what, and they're all going to learn differently, and they're all going to react to, being told certain things differently as well. How do you think that you have kind of managed to walk through that minefield that is, big personalities, passions, egos, stuff like that?
Oh, egos in terms of the fight game, you mean?
Right. Yes.
Oh, well, seriously, I kind of stay away from it. If I'm aware of it, I'll do my best to stay away from it because there's certain things that I like to do. Like, for example, one thing that my coach used to tell me to do, and he'd always say my gi is my passport. So whenever I traveled, I would bring a gi, and even now, I mean, I didn't do it recently, but I always bring training gear with me. So I'm not worried about what other people are doing. I just kind of, I'm aware of it, but, I like to just be alone and be in my own world. I'll like right now I'm watching fights, and it's kind of hard to even pick and choose what these people are doing and how to react. I try to not get involved because I know that it can pull out potentially the worst in me. I know the fight game is full of egos, and I wish it was just straight martial arts. You see nowadays, some of the ladies are entering OnlyFans, and the guys are turning into big mouths and creating this. Like they're trying to, like, McGregor wasn't the first one to do it, but the trash talking, it's too much for me at times. And when I see that, it actually brings the worst out of even fans, and you see it in the comment section. So I try to stay away from it. I try to turn a blind eye and just kind of keep training and not worrying about other people.
That's awesome that you kind of steer clear of all that. And you're right. And I mean, as much so business-wise, UFC and WWE, people think merged, but they just happen to be owned by the same company now. However, before that even happened, we had the Conor McGregors. You go back to Tito Ortiz, where they are cutting these promos. Yeah, they're helping sell fights, but at the end of the day, like, you're kind of also taking the respect out of the sport that is supposed to be there. And you're talking trash about, you could talk trash about a fighter if you want, but once you bring in their family and their kids and, their training partners, that you don't even have to do that because you're not fighting them. Like, you're setting up storylines for things that aren't ever going to have a conclusion to it. So, selling the fight is one thing, but once you make it that personal, like we saw with Conor and Dustin Poirier, there was no reason for that whatsoever. But I mean, I get the fact he was trying to sell fights, but he was still doing it after the fight was over and he had lost twice. So it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so that's so funny that you mentioned that, because I said to myself, what what we'll notice is that most people who do martial arts never ever get into a fight because they have a sense of control that people will never understand. And so when it comes to trash talking and things like that, like, I don't understand it. And then when you finally get into a fight, it's kind of, I for one can hold a grudge pretty well. But so even if we do get into a fight, say there's one winner in that physical altercation, that person will be looming over your head forever because that guy can kick your ass.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't happen, and say you are on the other side of the coin and the person kicks your ass, how are you supposed to like that person now? So no matter what, it's just kind of, I don't even think fighting in itself, like fighting in terms of like a dispute and things like that, it just makes no sense. Competing, I think that MMA is more of competing. It is a mental sport. Yes, it's a fight because it gets bloody and stuff like that. But how often do you know who you're going to fight weeks in advance? Or if you go into a street fight, you don't take a medical. You don't have medicals to go through and prepare for 8 weeks at a time. So I think that we should have more respect when it comes to the sport. But I get it, the trash talking puts butts in the seats, and I guess it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, obviously you go back to one of the best trash talkers ever, Muhammad Ali. Like, that's what he was doing. He was selling the fight. And so afterwards, he didn't really talk too much trash about the opponent either he beat or lost to because he didn't need to. He wasn't selling another fight until he had to sell another fight. And then, he would ramp it up a little bit. So, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, not unfortunately, because it can be very entertaining, but it is part of the game. But at the end of the day, it's about respect, and that's why it's like with the Kamaru Usman Colby Covington, the second fight. Like, Colby created this character because he was going to get cut, even though he was a great fighter and winning fights. He was just crazy boring, and nobody really cared about him. So he created this character where he, adopted the whole Trump situation, what was going on with him, which actually worked out real well for him because he's one of the first fighters ever to be, maybe the first, to be invited to the White House, invited to presidential debates, even during a pandemic time, and it got him a ton of publicity. It's still working because, rumorly he's going to get the next title fight, but after that fight with Kamaru in the cage, he said, they had nothing but respect for each other. They hugged it out. He said, it was all about, selling the fight. And Kamaru understood that because Kamaru is doing quite well on his own when it comes to talking trash. And, he's really leaning into that fashion sense of being a star and being in front of the camera, which I think is great, but he can also back it up in the cage. So it's a fine balance, and as long as at the end of the day they are respecting each other, that's really what it's all about.
I agree. Yeah, it's because you have to respect, and even like I said with fans, they talk junk about fighters, but they have no idea what the fighters go through. And I used to get on the social. I used to be in the comment section constantly defending fighters, and sometimes defending coaches. But the fighters themselves should have some sort of respect for one another because, say like somebody says, "Oh, Mayweather's scared." I was like, "He's scared? He fought 50 people, 50 plus people. Why would he be scared?" Yeah. And out of those 50 people, at least 10 of them were power punchers.
Yeah.
So it's like there's we shouldn't be calling each other scared at all because we all took the risk and put it on the line every single time, you know?
Right.
So there should be a mutual respect, you know? Like, somebody says that Ngannou's afraid of John Jones. Ngannou lived on a bench. He was homeless, you know? Like, why? And then if he's afraid of John Jones, why is he not afraid of Alistair Overeem, who's demolished people over the years? You know, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. So people shouldn't be saying these things. You know, I think the fans should have respect, and the athletes should have respect towards other athletes because it's just, I don't know, man, but it's just obvious that we go through stuff that normal people just don't go through.
Yes. Yeah. Like I was talking to some, I mean, I've talked to multiple fighters now. I've been lucky enough to do it, but I love hearing, because I love what I'm doing here with the different fighters and coaches, and they're allowing to show themselves as human beings. And I don't think that there's enough behind the scenes documentary type footage and series really showing that people are, you know, the fighters and the coaches are human beings at the end of the day. Yeah, they do, you know, have to compete and train like animals and go into war against another human being. But at the end of the day, like we talked about earlier, they're human beings. They're some of them are mothers, some of them are fathers. You know, they are children of somebody. They have friends that they go hang out with. They have family that come do what they do. Like with Embedded this past week, we saw Bilal Muhammad. You know, he doesn't fight during Ramadan, and that's fine. We saw the same thing with Khabib and all the Dagestani guys. They don't fight during Ramadan because training during that is not an easy situation if you can't fuel your body after you're done depleting it like that. So I do think that people need to look at, let's say you're going to a fight camp or you're about to start, you know, you're cutting weight and your family wants to go out to eat. Well, you can try to eat something there, or you just kind of hang out and watch them eat, which is a mental torture for you because you're smelling this food, you're seeing this food, and you can't even touch it because you're trying to cut weight, you're trying to get your body where it needs to be to go to war, and it, you know, people don't put that into their mental process when it comes to, you know, being a fighter. They just think, oh yeah, you go train at a gym and then you go fight in a cage. Well, no, there's far more than that goes into that. You know, when it comes to recovery, when it comes to cutting weight and diet wise, and it comes to, you know, even training, you've got to fit that in around picking your kid up from a soccer practice or whatever, or a date night with your partner because, again, you've been crazy busy training that you need to spend time with your partner. And you know, more people need to stop and think about these kind of things, that these people are human beings and they have a life outside of, you know, being in a gym and being in a cage.
All right. It boggles me. The crazy thing is, if you know, I think it's easy for people who train if this is the only thing that you have. Like if you're a single person and you're just training, but usually it's not that. You know, like you come from a background of, you know, especially if you're a young amateur who's trying to, you know, vie for a you know, a spot at greatness. You know, you're out of your way trying to fight your way into professional ranks, into the UFC, into Bellator, into all these places. It's, you know, you're going to have part-time jobs and odd jobs and girlfriends and living, like interesting living situations, you know, and we all kind of have things going on while we're chasing our dreams. So I think that, it's not just your dream. The dream comes with a lot of detours and different things, you know, like you hear all the time, a lot of these guys, they are trying to become professional athletes. They have their first fight and all of a sudden they meet a girl and, you know, they, you know, this girl is everything to them, or before you know it, that girl's pregnant, and then they have to go look for a job, and it's so many different things.